All right, it's time to cut the plywood for our stairs. We've measured our stairs top and bottom. We know that they're parallel. They're 34.5 inches wide, top and bottom. We know that our risers are 7.5 inches tall, and we know that our treads are 12 inches. So basically, we're just going to grab a piece of plywood and we're going to mimic the numbers that we have from there on the piece of plywood. The first thing you got to think about when you're cutting plywood is plywood has grain to it, just like any piece of wood, and it is stronger in length than it is in width. If we cut across here and we use this as our plywood for our horse, we'd get some really weak stairs. So when we lay a piece of plywood out for cutting stairs, we want to cut this way and have our lengths of our cuts this way across the plywood so that we get the integrity of the plywood and it gives us a nice strong stair. I'm going to start laying out this piece of plywood, and what I've done is I've pulled 34.5 inches from the end here, and I'll pull 34.5 there. I'll pull 34.5 back and 34.5 over, and so what that does is it gives me two sections on this piece of plywood that's 34.5 inches wide where I can start laying out my treads and my risers from. I pull it from the ends and leave the center as waste because I know that the end of the plywood is nice and straight. And I leave the inside of the plywood because once I've done two saw cuts, no matter how good of a saw cut person you are, well, your saw blade's going to drift a little bit in plywood. So actually what I've done is I've measured 34 3/8 inches just to take into account of a little bit of a wavery saw. We have 9 stairs, so what we'll need is 9 12-inch pieces and 9 7.5-inch pieces. So for instance, I have laid out one tread. I could snap this line, and this first piece here will be my first tread. And I'll keep doing that, 12 inches, 12 inches. Now, since this is a 4-foot piece of plywood and my saw blade is about 1/8 of an inch, if I try to do 4 12-inch pieces on this 4-foot wide piece of plywood, by the time I get down to here, I will have cut up about 3/8 of an inch with my saw blade, and this last piece will be a little bit small. So what I'll do is I'll do 3 12-inch pieces, and then I'll do one of my 7.5-inch pieces at the end, just so I can use the plywood very frugally. As I'm cutting these pieces, my saw blade is going to take up about 1/8 of an inch. So as I measure across for my 3 pieces here, I measure 12 inches, 24 1/8, I'm taking into account that 1/8, and 36 1/4. I'm taking in this 1/8 inch and this 1/8 inch when I cut this piece. When I lay these out, I like laying out all the big pieces first. I'll start with as many of the big pieces, the treads first, because if I make a mistake on a tread, I can always fall back. I can pick that piece up and cut it down to 7.5, and then I'll have a riser. So lay out all your big pieces first, get them all done, and then go to your risers. First thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to set the blade height. I just want it to be deep enough to penetrate the plywood, but not anything more than, say, 1/8 inch. We put runners underneath the plywood here, some 2x4s, to keep the plywood from falling down after we cut it. So I don't want to cut those pieces of 2x4 when I cut my plywood. Remember how you laid out your lines. You want to cut, if you're coming from this side, you want to cut on that side of the line, that side of the line, and if you pulled from this side, you want to cut on that side of the line. I pulled this way for this line, so I want to cut on that side of the line. Otherwise, I'll cut these pieces too small. Well, we've cut all our plywood, we're ready to go. We're going to install this plywood with nails first, just to tack it in place, and then we're going to screw it. Glue and screws work the best for everything. Stuff doesn't move after the screws are put in, and the glue holds it really tight. If you look over here, we've cut our plywood. We have a tread piece here. We have a riser piece here. Now, I've cut the first one a little bit short because remember we've shortened up the first step because we're going to have brick on top. So this one we cut down a little bit, and I also cut it even a little bit short, say 1/4 inch. That 1/4 inch will keep the plywood off the concrete here, and it'll keep the moisture from getting into the plywood. So we'll glue first, and then we'll nail, and then we'll screw. All right, it's time to start. Finally, we're going to get something that looks like stairs here. I put glue on everything. Oops, getting a little carried away here. I kind of like having glue everywhere. I don't like squeaky stairs. All right, we'll take our first riser here, our short one. Even though we won't see it, we'll put the pretty piece out. Now I got the first riser on. We're going to put glue up for the second riser. We're doing this, we're putting risers on first because as we put the tread down, the tread's going to hit here on the riser. We're going to back nail or back screw from the back side of the riser into the tread because we don't want any flex on the tread, and this will give the tread a little bit of support in the back. It gets support in the front from the first riser. So this riser helps from the front here, and this one we're going to back screw on the back of the tread. So again, we'll tack this. And now we can glue our horses, and right across the top of our first riser, and maybe even a little bit on the next riser. Take our first tread, lay it right down on there. You'll notice we have a little overlap here. It's not really an issue because we're going to be covering the whole stair with some bricks. If you're concerned about it, you can cut this back a little bit before you set it up. I'm not terribly concerned about it because I know it's all going to get covered. If you cut it back too much, the problem is that you'll be beyond the face here and you won't get good nailing or screwing down into your first riser. I like it to be a little bit bigger than necessary when I know I'm going to cover it, because that way I'm sure to get this tread right up against that riser so I have a good fit, okay? We definitely want to screw the riser to the tread. What I'm doing is I'm using these screws that have a lot of smooth face on it with threads at the end. What that does is it allows the screw to go in, and then this portion, the smooth portion, grabs the plywood and pulls it in. So I'll put 3 to 4 screws in each of the horses. I'll put 2 or 3 screws into the into the riser. And I'll put a few into the backing material that's behind this first riser. Critical though is, again, coming from behind this tread, I want to screw from the back side of the riser into the tread. So we'll show you that. All right, you can see the back side of the second riser here. Now right along here is where I want to screw into the tread. That'll keep the tread from flexing down. So the glue that's on the riser and the screws will help keep it nice and firm. Now you'll notice I've come up about 3/8 of an inch. The plywood's 3/4 of an inch, so half of that is 3/8, and I'm just eyeballing it. See, I put in 3, and what that does is makes this tread nice and sturdy, and I'll do it on both sides. Well, as you can see, we've glued everything and we've screwed everything. Now, in these 2 risers and this tread, we have something like 35 screws. So buy a big enough box of screws, I guess is what I'm saying, because you're going to use quite a few as you're going up the stairs. Now, we did 2 risers and 1 tread here. Now all we do is we put our riser on first and then our tread. Riser, tread, riser, tread, riser, tread, all the way up the stairs. And you glue it first, screw it, put the tread down, and tie it all together. Make sure you screw across here and from the back. And after you're done and everything dries, you'll have a nice sturdy set of stairs, and you'll be amazed the difference between these horses being kind of flimsy and a real solid staircase. This piece, this riser piece, gives it a nice shear across the front. It kind of holds everything vertically, and so they can't move up and down because you have all this material here. And that's what stiffens up the stairs. Nice thing about working on stairs is you have a nice little platform for your tools. Everything can kind of stick with you as you're going up. You can tack each one of these pieces off with a nail and just keep working right up the stairs, but it's important to do the screws from the back side of the riser into the tread as you go up, because it's kind of a bear to get underneath the stairs once you've built them and get into that area. It's much easier to do it as you go up. For everything on the face, though, you can just go ahead and tack it, get all your wood in, and then come back and screw it off, as long as you do it before the glue dries. And usually glue will give you 2 or 3 hours to work with. So that's pretty easy. You'll be astounded as you go up the stairs how rigid they become. The other thing we have to talk about is railings. As we're going up the stairs, obviously you have to have something to hold on to, and railings are specific for all areas. You have to check your local building codes to make sure that when they're built, they are the right height, and between the pickets is the right dimension. In our area, a 4-inch ball cannot pass through the pickets. If a 4-inch ball passes through the pickets, they're not to code. So what we're going to do here is work on the stairs, get a membrane on them to make sure they're weather tight. At that point, we'll probably build a railing, and then we'll cover the stairs with the product that we've decided to cover them with.
Home Improvement Camp. Have at it.